In which case, what time is it? I think the next topic might be quite a big one because it encompasses lots of other things, and particularly if we've got some newer teachers and they might want to ask some questions about it. When it comes to homework, I'm thinking of how we make the use of the time outside of lessons. And I appreciate for different people that might not mean homework in the sense that other people are thinking homework. So first of all, I'm thinking about how do they make the most of the time outside of the lessons, and how much first of all, I kind of quite like to know how much we expect them to do outside of lessons, and that includes the stuff that you set, like write this essay, read this article, versus also things Adam's mentioned, go back over your notes, read over that. So I'm just going to put a poll up. It's cut off the screen, but there wasn't very much less on there. And if you could think about for the whole course, so if you teach half the course, what would you expect? Double it, basically. You guys did. Okay. I thought he might be skewing the polls. He's a music teacher, they don't do any homework.
Just listen.
Okay, I can't vote either, but I would be a vote for 5 hours. I think there's just one person that perhaps hasn't voted, but they might not be able to. There is a cannot say button at the bottom if you're not quite sure. Okay, I'll publish those results. So 4 hours or 6 hours, and at my previous school it was 5 hours. So somewhere in that region. I think the kids always told me that I was the only teacher that ever set 5 hours, because I used to be very, very, I used to time out their homework for them. So I'd say, you're going to spend 2 hours on this, you're going to spend what, expect to spend. And because they used to complain that I set too much, so I used to make a point that I was only setting 5 hours. Does that surprise anyone? So Manisha School toying with the idea of tracking this and getting to log log the hours that they've got. Can you see the results, by the way, or not?
No.
I did. Yeah.
There we go.
Oh yeah, now we do.
So I can see, but I'm fully in agreement with Adam that what I've always tried to do is to make the homework sort of permanent. Yeah, and I, for example, when I've had the budget available, so I've literally given them a book to read, on which we then do some little sort of seminar things, and I want them to listen to some podcasts and do these notes and blah blah blah, and then occasionally chuck a little essay at them, which, like Manisha's, all sort of pre-planned and they should know when that's coming up. But then, as Manisha says, I've sort of been prompted, I suppose, by this last 6 months of everything going online and stuff to monitor that a lot more, because I know I never really did. And I said, oh, you should be doing these things, and I never really sort of quite followed through, and that was a big failing. So I want to perhaps have them a Google Doc or something that I can then look at to see that they've taken some notes, maybe on some podcast, or they've done whatever. Yeah. And have it as a big ongoing thing, because I can't be bothered like setting lots of different things all the time. And as Manisha said, talk about do the work in the class and stuff. So if there's just something I can like little monitor ticking over, that's my preferred.
And when you set your initial expectations with what you're expecting, do you say, I expect you to listen to the Economist podcast every week, or?
Yeah, I specify particular ones, and as I give them a book and things, so it's all sort of laid out in like the sort of course expectations. But yes, I realise I never quite.
Out of interest, what book do you recommend?
It's a little bit old, so I've sort of done this and I won't be able to afford it this year anyway. But I used to get them to read David Smith's Free Lunch and also Undercover Economist. And we do these. They're in their little course book thing. There are these pages with some questions, and I'd assign some pairs essentially to be like the seminar leaders and to have answered those questions and to deliver something, and it goes variably.
And is that something you'll do again with a different book, or is that something you perhaps?
Yeah, possibly. I think I'll probably just slim down to the Undercover Economist, because it basically, the Undercover Economist, obviously it's not economics exam, but it is pretty much what you need to know for first year micro, really. And
You get them thinking the right way, I think, as well. You get them thinking the right way. My current favourite book that, when I'm back in the classroom, I'll absolutely be using is 50 Economics Classics. And it's just amazing. It just summarises lots and lots and lots of individual, lots of the big ideas in economics. I don't think
is that 50 economics ideas you need to know, or something? Or is that something?
No,
different?
50 Economics Classics, and it goes through. So it picks 50 books, the 50 seminal works, and summarises them, and also gives you a little bit about the author as well. But I mean, realistically, no child is going to read The Wealth of Nations. I remember being told to read The Wealth of Nations when I was 16, and with the best will in the world, I mean, it's what 600,000 words or something. It's ridiculous. It's and most of that is on what the price of barley was in 1400s. So we're going a little bit off topic here as to kind of what wider reading we'd recommend. But anyway, so that's my recommendation at the minute.
Just to cap that off, the other thing I'm possibly going to use with upper six is I've just read Extreme Economies by Richard Davies, and I really like that, and I thought I had a really load of really useful things for, again, sort of thinking the right way, and a lot of interesting sort of case studies, so I'm going to try and use that in some way.
Nice. I think Linda
Hughes,
is another one that a lot of people recommend as well. So there's a couple of people there who are kind of aiming to have ongoing homework, and kind of with the regularity of it. Do you think that helps with people actually doing it? As in, do you have much? If you have something regular, does that mean that they get in the habit of, they know what they're doing each week, rather than having kids that haven't perpetually?
Well, for me, basically, like one or two did and the rest didn't, and I didn't really follow up. But I think if I follow up, yes, it could be.
Can I just ask homework strategies? I kind of was talking about the pre-learning and the consolidation learning before and after each lesson. I've never kind of actually come up with like a neat system for doing it. I find myself setting mini homeworks every lesson. One, has someone got a kind of a solution to that? And two, the only solution I kind of thought of was I need to be in kind of 2 weeks ahead planned, and then just kind of have like almost like a homework task sheet that's got everything I need to do over the next 2 weeks, and my website for which lesson I need to be done for. And then when I've got a smarter system or
I think we're losing a little bit. Is that just me that's struggling with that?
No, I couldn't quite make all of that out. No.
Sorry.
I think I got the end of it.
Oh, now you've definitely turned into a robot. There might be a connection issue. Perhaps if you type, and then I can share.
Okay.
So it sounds.
Now?
Oh yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, fine. I had another microphone plugged in. So just on homework. I've always kind of set mini homeworks every lesson, like pre-learning and consolidation learning after each lesson, which I just find a bit messy. I've been trying to work out a way of kind of doing it, and thought whether I should do like a sheet of all the kind of pre-reading and consolidation activities they need to do for like the next 2 weeks, and like almost a table, task, and then kind of which lesson it's due for. Is that too much? Do I need to set one homework a week, or how else kind of would you guys do that? Like,
I mean, it sounds like I had a completely different method from everybody else. I set homework very traditionally, but I set everything explicitly. So it'd be, you need to spend, well, I only put the timings in, partly because they said I was setting too much, and partly because I had a lot of boys who really struggled with time management. Not that it matters that they were boys, but it was very, very specific class. And I would be very explicit. So I'd say you need to learn 1.2 keywords. You need to learn, you need to memorize those. You need to read page 2. You need to write this essay. You need to answer these questions. And we'd have a running thing on the board of what they needed to do and when it was due in and things like that. But I know that now a lot of us, a lot of schools are more set up with VLEs. So, Teams and Google Classroom, whatever, that then becomes a little bit easier because they can, that then becomes that running document. I find that I am not good enough to do what you guys are doing and plan 2 weeks ahead, because I don't really know where I'm going to be. I've never been very good at kind of knowing exactly where I'm going to be. I kind of just plan a block and then get to. But that might be me.
With the system I'm thinking of, that's my worry, is that I then just won't end up teaching the lesson that I thought I was going to end up teaching, and then I messed it up. So is it unfair to expect, like, if you've got a lesson the following day, to have expected notes to be done that night, ready for the following day kind of thing? That's my thing, is I don't want to put too much on them immediately.
It's so difficult, isn't it? I mean, I'm perhaps a bit more harsh, but I don't think it's unreasonable to expect some stuff during the next day. However, you've got to consider that some kids might be working, some kids might have a job. I think that comes from your sixth form culture. For example, I know that the school that I did some temporary work at, that would be absolutely fine because they're all expected to do that. But whereas in other schools in different circumstances, that might not be the case, because some people might have to work or whatever. My husband has just written evil to me, so people don't think that's realistic. I think that is a problem with particularly if you're requiring tasks to be done before the lesson, is being able to predict where you're going to be at what point, and then does that then stop you being flexible? It's difficult unless they read a couple of lessons ahead, perhaps, and that might be another way of getting around it, is that then, so that you set the work so that there's maybe 2 days in between when you expect them to have done it versus the lesson that's going to depend on it. It's really difficult. I mean, Manish, you're the kind of the expert in this, and that you do a lot of pre-learning.
Yeah, so I think it kind of, I still have a lot of flexibility. Like, there is 100% times when I'm not on track or I'm slightly ahead, and I kind of wing it at times as well. So if I say to them, we're going to start this topic at this point, and this is what you need to do, but I realise that they're on a trip or something along those lines, I'll literally just edit the deadline. And because it's all electronic, then as soon as I edit the deadline and I've told them everything's in sync with it. But my school would be a massive no-no about giving them work for the next day. So we have to give them at least 2 weeks to do a piece of homework. And that's across our entire school, which is why it kind of forces us to have our whole year planned.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I mean, it does make a big impact if you can't plan for the next day. Georgia's says she finds it easier to set specific tasks on consolidation, which is probably that seems quite similar to perhaps what I do. If it's pre-learning, it's normally only reading the textbook, and again, kind of that links back to how good are kids at reading, at getting information from texts. But if it, I think it depends on the purpose of what you're setting it for. What was my next question? Sorry. With
pre-learning though, I give them an option of tasks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they don't have to read it, which kind of gets away from I've got to read a textbook. So I'll have like a textbook, a video, and then potentially like a podcast or something like that.
Yeah,
kind of covers all the same material, if that makes sense.
I almost, because I don't really follow up, I almost use it like a stick to beat them with later, if like they're complaining about not getting it or something. So, well, first day you had this document which said this is the sort of thing we're going to be doing in February on inflation or whatever. You could have looked at it by now. Your fault.
And
that's exactly what I'm showing them tomorrow.
Yeah, we sound very similar.
This is your year.
Do any of your students have selective deafness, whereby you say your homework is to read, blah, 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 switch off at the point where you say read. Or watch, or I think this comes back to that point about accountability. Is it important that we check that students have done this, or is that a kind of waste of our time? Or if we set it, is it important to follow through with it to show that it's important? What do we feel about that?
I think it is, and it's been a failing of mine, which is why this sort of exactly the same way as we could have been working from home all along with the economy. I could have been doing this all along, but the lockdown has made me sort of realise, oh, hold on, I could just make this a Google Doc and I could just look at it, and that'd be enough. That'd be enough for me to be able to go, yeah, I saw that, or I can follow up that person hasn't done it.
And then linking that back to the first question, if things are, for example, notes, whatever, what are you looking for when you to check that they've done it? Is completion enough, or are you looking for a certain style, or are you looking for a certain quality?
I think for this, just having done something, I think I'm looking for sort of engagement, which I've got faith that 18 months of that will have results, and I'm not too bothered about what they've sort of individually done on that sort of individual week. I think.
And
I agree. I was just saying, to make it more manageable, I would just target kids. So like those kids, once you get to know those kids who always do quality notes, like just have a cursory glance to know that they're not checking them.
Yeah.
But then actually go and see those 3 or 4 kids and actually read their notes. Like
know your targets. And again, sort of linking back, would you? Sorry, the dog's trying to attack us. Would you give feedback on improving the quality of notes? Or do you give feedback on improving the quality of notes? What's the level that you're expecting? What are our expectations with note taking? Because I guess that kind of links. If a lot of the note taking we're thinking of happens outside of the classroom, how do we monitor the quality of those? And actually, go on, Adam first.
I think I would model and show on a visualizer a high attaining student's notes. Where like sometimes, I don't know, if a kid has a really horrible textbook, exercise book or folder, you get the kid who's got an A star and you show people how many notes they're making, what kind of notes they're taking, rather than maybe saying, I don't know, just show the whole what a good one looks like almost.
Yeah. Manisha?
Are we the only school that do like folder checks?
I do folder checks, but I'm so bad at following through on them, though. That's the problem, is that I complain about them and then I say, right, you need to do this, this and this, and then I'm not very good at checking it the week after. So give us your tips for folder checks then.
So it's a sixth form wide thing. So every sixth form student will do folder checks in all 3 of their subjects. So we basically have the spec, and then they rag rate themselves on every part of it, and then we have to then put that data into Go for Schools in terms of what they have rag rated themselves. This sounds really like admin heavy, but it's not. It's really quick now. But we folder check 3 times a year. So and it's across year 12 and 13 at the same point for our department. So it's going to be before October half term, and then just after Christmas, and then just before Easter, because they're kind of like key assessment points for us. And I have kept really good notes that students have said that I can, and I have them in like an open evening folder that I've basically just got. So I've got like awesome versions of notes for every single topic in micro and macro, but they've consolidated the whole topic, and I just kind of scanned them in and kept them. So I will show them that when they start, and like sixth form open evenings and stuff, in like just one of those display folders. So then they can always see what it should look like in terms of, but they've also consolidated to a page as well. So it's doable.
And interestingly, do the students who make good notes do well because they're conscientious and they're the kids that go back over stuff? Or are those notes useful in helping them to do well? What do you think?
Interestingly, the kids that I've had to do really, really well, like have had really good organisation. So I don't know if you've seen or ever met a teacher. I don't know if I think he's a teacher. Phil Hensman, he works for TU sometimes and does like, they did when the new spec first came out, they did a training day on how to get kids A stars in economics. Mm-hmm. And he talked about marginal gains, and he's got like 20 things that he has on his and then he had an independent study booklet type thing, well, not like a sheet of like 20 things that kids can do in economics, and I literally give them that every half term as well. Like, what are you doing and what can you now do in those 4 hours a week? So yes, they are, but it's also because they're doing everything else on there, because they are also Adam, I'll send that round, that's fine. Because they're also the ones that are reading and they care, and I think it's because they're engaged as well, which is what Andrew was saying as well, that I think the engagement then feeds through to the I've made really good notes and I actually care and I've read into this subject type thing.
I think again, there's kind of more links there with the why, with the homework question, is that if they're doing extra things, so do you tell them at the start of the year, this is what's going to get you good results, and then kind of take a step back?
Yeah, in all of our classrooms, the business and economics classrooms, we literally have the poster of marginal gains, but it's also something they get at the start that goes into their folder. So they'll get, when they come in tomorrow, a sheet with marginal gains. They'll get all the things that they can do for independent study and it's been slightly tailored for business and finance as well. So the economics one is very specific, so it gives specific YouTube channels that they can go on to. But I also spend, and this is going to sound really OCD, I also spend a double period getting them to write on dividers and literally organising their folders for them, because that massively helps them know where stuff is going.
Is there any contrast? I have worked with a teacher before who said that folders don't matter, and made quite a compelling argument. It's not something that I need to be in control, so I couldn't cope with it, but made quite a compelling argument that folders don't matter. Does anyone hold that view?
No, maybe, I don't know. It was just the Venetia's dividers. It just sparked this memory of giving the students some dividers once. What should I put on them? I said, I don't know, whatever you like. However you want to organise your notes. It's not my problem.
I tell them what goes on every single divider.
Micro and macro, 2 dividers. You might as well have 2 folders. Done. If you want.
My colleague's argument was that if you're only using, it depends on the purpose of why you're making notes. I mean, if what you write down is to help you learn something and you don't need to refer back to it, then it doesn't need to be neat and organised because it's already served its purpose. However, her argument was that you did need some revision notes, but you didn't need to write those notes necessarily, or you could be writing those notes. Those could be, as long as they were condensed notes that you were looking at, it doesn't matter whether or not you wrote, it doesn't matter. The other stuff that you've got doesn't matter. The stuff that you've done in class, the scribbling down of the understanding, the right answering questions, don't matter if you're not going to refer back to them. So what's the point in spending time making a folder look pretty? Particularly, like, is it to, are you just doing it so that it looks, so you've got the evidence that they're doing the work? And I think that does depend on the sort of students you've got as well. My husband is writing that he finds people that do make an effort, to make their folders neat, are the ones that do go back to stuff, whereas the ones that don't make their folders neat, particularly those with poor handwriting, perhaps don't go back to their notes. And he's telling me that he didn't go back to his notes because he didn't make them nice in the first place. So does us putting emphasis on the notes being nice encourage students to actually use them, perhaps? And is that an argument to make them nice and usable and whatever?
I think because we've now got the synoptic element in year 13, regardless of whatever kind of subject we are, and because the year 13 knowledge gets them to kind of forces them to know, no, what am I talking about? The year 13 exams force them to know both years. Yeah. I think that's why my kids that haven't made good notes in year 12, because it's the year 12s that don't make good notes, the year 13s have kind of got it. They're the ones that really, really struggle, because they then realise, I've made really bad notes for the entirety of the year, and I've got all this stuff that's missing, and now I'm learning new year 13 stuff, but I still need to know the year 12 stuff, like, what do I do? And they're the ones that get like really panicked, like, well, I told you so.
Yeah, that's what Adam's saying.
Yeah, I think my husband's making quite a good. Sorry, I don't know why he's here. No, I do know why he's here. He presses the button to let people in. But he's saying that he thinks it's a hangover from. I don't know why I don't just let him speak, but he's not allowed to talk. He thinks it's a hangover from low down in school, when you make notes in low down school. You make notes because that's what your teacher's telling you to do, and you never actually look at those notes again. You buy a CGP revision guide, and kind of moving away from that way of from that model, and knowing that actually a revision guide, the higher up you go, the less perfect revision guides become, because it becomes about your interpretation, your understanding, your way of explaining, and actually as the ideas get bigger, you can't fit them onto a neat A4 page. It becomes the issue. I've just realised we're almost timing out now. I haven't got a questionnaire for you this time, but if anyone does have particular topics that they want to discuss next time, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I normally I used to have a list of things to go through. I'm basically through my list now, but normally they come to me like when I'm like mowing the lawn or something. I'm like, oh, I really want to ask that question. But if there's anything other people are particularly keen to know about, Andrew?
Can I ask one very quick question, like right now? I've just discovered today that my new school that I've just joined needs me to test my year 12s on their initial learning in 2 weeks' time, which they then use that alleged data to like shake out people from courses and find out.
Oh right, yeah.
What? Okay, Adam does the same. What do you do in that? I mean, I'd have given in the past. I'd have given them things to do at that point, but it's never been so sort of semi-formalised. And what on earth have you taught them in 2 weeks' time? But
I mean, my previous school would do that, and actually.
Is it just anything? Get them to write anything that's vaguely economic and say, you can't write, you're out, you can write, you're in.
Sometimes it's about thinking about the students that you think perhaps should be on different courses or ones that you think should.
I'll set them up.
And changing the assessment so that it does what you want it to do. And sometimes it's just about them having done something. You know, if they haven't engaged in the first 2 weeks, they're not going to engage the rest of the time. So even just a basic knowledge test.
Yeah.
You know, have they done? You know, are they willing to learn? Because actually, for most kids, that's the indicator of whether they're going to do well or not. Is are they willing to learn? If they're not willing to, you know, revise the stuff in the first 2 weeks, are they going to be willing to do it for the rest of the year?
But there's not a lot in the first 2 weeks, and it's pretty easy. So
yes, but there's a lot of kind of, you know, there's a lot
some
of
people will still fail.
Yeah. That you can ask. I mean, you do the course in your own way, but you know the nature of economic stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there are some sort of questions that you can, you know. Yeah. Again, he's being useful today. I don't know what to say. He's saying you potentially assess the engagement that you've already talked about. You know, chapter 1 of the book, or and perhaps looking at engagement. But any other?
I think I'm thinking to do a combination of the two. Like I think kind of fit, I don't know, like a half-hour test. I don't know, maybe 15 multiple choice questions, and then maybe one or
bit of random writing.
Just like mid-length exam questions where they've got to write like 2 paragraphs. Like just I think on that, that's all you really need to see, isn't it? Like it is, as you said, it's just a filter.
So I think sometimes as well, what you've just said is a combination of a few things means that you can use it in the way that you want to use it in, because then you can kind of you can manipulate that data as you see fit. Am I a little bit of a cynic? Maybe. But yeah. Anyway, so if there's anything else anyone wants to discuss next time, any questions, if any of our newer teachers want to ask questions to people, Manisha, I think she's already put her Twitter handle. I think she's already put that down. You can contact me as well. I'm not sure Andrew wants to be contacted, but he is on Twitter as well. But if you've got questions, I'm sure we're happy to answer those. There are normally more of us here, but it is the first day back, so we'll forgive them.
Yeah, I'm still in my suit.
Okay, but if there are any questions that you think would be good to cover next time, any topics, do just give me a shout. Next one is first Wednesday of the month. I'm trying to stick to that. First Wednesday of the month, because then at least I'll remember as well. And it means fewer decisions for me. Behavioural economics. I'm so bad at behavioural economics, so that's a really good one because I could do with learning a bit more about it.
Cost and revenue. I'm only asking because I've got 2 very, very different groups. One really high, one really low ability, and teaching them. And I'm teaching the lower ability in less time. But cost and revenue, yeah.
I've written a blog post on that, with just lots and lots of different resources from across everywhere. But if you find some extra ones for me to add to it, that'd be great. Because I love teaching cost and revenues, but I can imagine that with different groups it could be a different experience. Right, okay, I shall leave it there then, and I shall see you next month. Have a wonderful first week back. You're all going to survive fighting those invisible fires. But yeah, you're all going to be fine.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Thank you again.
See you in a month. Bye-bye.